everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Dance Talk Realness, a podcast where we discuss all nuances concerning education and dance, because a dance experience is an experience worth talking about. I'm your host, Truly B, here with my awesome, as always, co-host, Daryl P. And today we are joined by the lovely Miss Kylene Stephens.
Hey.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited. I haven't spoken to you in years.
I know, and yet it seems like a blink of an eye, right?
It does. And I'm like, I know we keep track of each other through social media and such, but I was like, oh, yay. So I'm so glad that you were able to fit us into your schedule today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So let's jump straight in. So if you would be so kind as to just share some of your dance background, kind of how you got started in dance and what got you to be where you are currently for our audience.
Yes. So I actually grew up in Indiana. So I'm a Midwesterner, and I, like most probably Midwestern dancers, started when I was very young, tap and ballet. My sisters danced, and I just became obsessed. And so I danced all through grade school, and then upon graduation was kind of having this thought of, well, what do you even do with dance as a career? It doesn't seem like a smart choice to choose to go into dance for college. So I decided to not do that for my first year and ended up at Purdue University. Was instantly very unhappy, regretting my decision because I had lost this connection to my body that was so important to me that I didn't realize I needed desperately in my life. So upon the end of my freshman year at Purdue, I was frantically looking for different college dance programs that didn't require an audition, because true to Kylene fashion, I was last minute and indecisive in my choice to leave Purdue. And so I actually happened upon Western Kentucky University. The jazz professor at the time I had known, her mother was the director of the dance studio I grew up in. So I was familiar with her teaching style, familiar with her classes, and knew if I'm going to be transferring to take dance classes, whether that be majoring or continuing on with the dance education, I at least want to know I'm going to enjoy the classes I'm taking. So I transferred to WKU. My first year there was kind of a audition in a sense. And I, again, moved thinking, oh, I'm just going to minor. I'm just doing this for me. And after a full year of being like extremely involved in the program, they advised me, why don't you just get the major? You're basically doing that anyways. So I double majored at WKU in dance and biology, and kept me very, very busy. But while at WKU, I was able to participate in a lot of different classes. We had different guest artists, James Clouser, Nicole Clark Springer, Carlos Dos Santos, Eric Rivera, that all came. So I got a lot of different dance perspectives in that experience. I also was able to participate in the Jazz World Dance Congresses that were thrown by Giordano Dance Chicago. Participated in some performances there, and was able to study abroad for the first time in Italy, where I was able to perform on a raked stage and up in the mountains, where if you grew up in Indiana and it's completely flat, it's very different dancing in the mountains. You can't breathe. It's really hard. But I got to experience kind of exploring dance through a lens where, maybe I didn't understand the instructor, or maybe they were doing something differently than I had experienced before. And it kind of just really opened my perspective to, well, what else is out there? And as Truly mentioned earlier before we got started, there's so much dance. Where do you start? And I feel like I really kind of got to expand my visions of dance at WKU. Graduated, didn't really know what I was going to do, moved to Chicago, because that's what you do when you graduate with a dance degree and you're not ready for New York. So I moved to Chicago. I taught at a studio up in Skokie, and that's where I really kind of fell in love with teaching, which I did not think that I would enjoy at all. And actually, my senior year at WKU, there was a really impressive, very talented group of freshmen that came in, just naturally gifted, and they were a mess. They were all over the place. And so I remember being in class with them and being like, oh, you have like so much ability, like beyond what I have, anatomically speaking. Why are you just throwing it away, all this beautiful technique? Like, you should be thinking about how you're moving through the movement. You should be thinking about how you're applying yourself. And that kind of got me thinking like, oh, I'm actually like pretty good at understanding how the human body moves, how to mentor students in a sense. So when I dove into teaching more full time at a studio, that's when I really kind of realized maybe I need to not be chasing down this performance avenue, but instead be using my gifts to help young dancers perceive or achieve their own performance venues. So after being in Chicago a couple years, I wasn't really happy there. I wasn't really finding my place. So I kind of chatted with a few different people about, other teaching positions elsewhere, what avenues I could maybe explore. And through that conversation, someone had a conversation with someone else who had a conversation with someone else. You know how it goes. The world is small. And within a week, I actually was being contacted by the same jazz professor that I fell in love with at WKU, reaching out and asking if I'd be interested in adjuncting in the fall. They were in desperate need of an instructor. And even though I didn't have any MFA program started at the moment, we were in discussion that I was supported by the faculty that was currently there to come in and start teaching a couple classes with the idea that I would go on to get my master's. So of course I was like, yes, sign me up. That sounds great. What a wonderful opportunity. So I moved back to WKU. I started teaching at a local studio on top of teaching at WKU, and I started frantically looking for grad school programs to apply to. Again, had no idea I was ever going to go to grad school for dance, and never realized how much I really needed that experience until I found Hollands University. And woohoo, I know, alumni, yay. Hollands is a wonderful, wonderful program. It also gives you the opportunity to study as a low residency artist, which basically gives you that flexibility to continue with your day-to-day professional aspects that you're working on throughout the year, and then take concentrated 8 weeks of time in the summer to focus on your higher education, your master's program. So that was a huge thing for me. I didn't want to lose this opportunity of already being an adjunct at a university to give that up to go to grad school. I wanted to be able to continue to be both, continue to develop myself as a professional while getting this continued education. And Hollands just completely changed my life. I had no idea what to expect. And everything I thought that I expected, it was the polar opposite of that and more, but in the best way possible. Through Hollands, I got to meet so many incredible people. I got to understand just how vast the dance world is. I got to understand how wrong I was in so many perspectives about dance and perspectives about learning about dance and teaching about dance. And with Hollands too, we were able to study abroad in Frankfurt, Germany, and Berlin for part of those summer sessions. And so the exposure that I got there just with European dance and what they're doing out there, and then being able to learn from different artists with a plethora of different backgrounds. I mean, it just drastically shaped who I was, what I thought. It still constantly is reshaping all of that. And I'm just beyond grateful for that experience. And I think attending Hollands really kind of shaped also who I became as an educator, which I think is so important, because I think so many people in the world are only teaching what they were taught. And not that that's not correct, but I think we're in this huge transitional period in dance. And if you're not continually growing as an educator, then you're just stifling your students as well. And I think I was very much, teaching what I thought I should be teaching at a university setting, not teaching what I've learned, if that makes sense. And yeah, Hollands helped change all of that. On top of all that, again, it seems like a lot. I was dancing professionally with some smaller companies in Nashville and Louisville. I've done some choreographic works in my own personal time for various different places and things. WKU keeps you very busy. Well, just adjunct in general keeps you very busy, from the demands of teaching day to day, student needs within the department, especially a smaller university. You usually take on several different additional adventures as well, whether that be recruitment stuff or choreographing or, extra projects like the musicals and working with the musical theater kids, which
Mhm.
I love. Never knew that I was going to love musical theater as much as I do. But there's some really, really incredibly and talented individuals in the musical theater world, and they need more dance. And if I'm able to do that, then I'm very grateful for that. So I was able to choreograph some musicals for WKU. And it's just kind of crazy. I've been there. This will be my 7th year, starting this semester, and just kind of looking back through all the things I've done. I'm just kind of, where did the time go? And I don't even remember doing half of the stuff. Like, that came out of my body. So that's been really exciting, I guess, kind of going back through and thinking through the transformation I've kind of gone through in the past 7 years or so, since being at WKU. What else can I say? Yeah, I guess right now I am just in this weird place of what's next, 7 years is a long time, and I'm wondering now if I'm too becoming stagnant in what I'm doing, whether that be professionally as an educator or professionally as a choreographer and a performer. I think too, when you are in small communities, dance isn't appreciated, and not a lot of people are educated about dance beyond what they see on TV or beyond what they have at their fingertips. And so I'm constantly questioning, what's next, not just for me, but for my fellow educators that are in this small community of Kentucky. There's not a lot of professional experience for people outside of just teaching at a studio or teaching somewhere else. So I'm interested in maybe what I can contribute to continuing that opportunity for professional dancers like myself that are finding it hard to place themselves in an adult dance environment and community, outside of just being an educator. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yes, yes. So just going off of that very last piece. So do you think you are considering being in the market of relocating, or is it more so trying to see what else you can do to help expand um, the dance community and opportunities that are there? Or are you just kind of up in the air, maybe somewhere in between both?
Yeah, I'd say I'm probably somewhere in between both.
Mhm.
I never thought when I moved back to Bowling Green, Kentucky, after being in Chicago, that I would still be here 7 years later.
Mhm.
So a part of me feels like, well, if I would have moved, I would have done it by now. And then two, you get to a point where you get very ingrained in a community, whether it's 100% working for you or not, it's something that becomes a part of you. Um, I also, on top of teaching at WKU, I have really gotten involved with a local fitness studio. So I teach spin, Pilates, TRX, and aerial yoga there. And I'm very, very ingrained in that community as well. And just the combination of physical training outside of the dance world has become extremely important to me, and also has shifted and kind of shaped the way that I look at dance education, and the body in dance. And so I think the idea of leaving that behind if I were to move is also a little jarring. So now I'm kind of having this conversation of, okay, well, if I'm not happy with what I have access to in my community, then what can I contribute to change the conversation or to create space for dance in this community? And I have a lot of very talented friends that live, not just here in Bowling Green, but live up in Louisville, live in Nashville, who are also struggling with the same things. Maybe there's been programs in the past that have provided opportunity for older dancers to perform and create work, and those have either fizzled off or disappeared or become too much work for the person running them to head on. So I'm definitely interested in ways to create a collaborative community that it doesn't really matter location. And I think COVID in a lot of ways has kind of provided us with these tools that we didn't normally have, Zoom and Zoom rehearsals, and creating creating dance when everyone is in a different location is now extremely accessible to us. And so I'm very interested in, okay, how can we take this newly developed tool and use it to bring dancers together in different locations that weren't usually maybe able to have a rehearsal or weren't able to bring their ideas, onto the screen or into the same room. So I've been in conversation with a few friends of mine that live up in Louisville about potentially starting, some type of collective in a sense, I guess, where maybe we would come together and maybe once a month find a space where we can all be in the same room, but weekly we meet virtually and either play with movement or play with different ideas that we're interested in studying, and just kind of see where it takes us, and maybe have an end goal of having a performance next year sometime with whatever it is that we've created. But I think just creating space for something like that to start is important, because I know it's easy to feel like you don't, if you're not dancing with the big name companies in the big cities, then you're no longer important, and what you have to create and say is no longer important. And I think if anything, the vast expansiveness of dance are these rural communities here. That's where you're teaching young students to fall in love with dance and to want to continue to pursue careers in dance or teach later on. And I think there's so much vastness in the ruralness of dance community that's overlooked, that I think if I can create something in my small community for people like me to continue to feel important and to continue to feel like they're able to produce work and it be important, then let's explore that. Let's figure out what we can do. So
Yeah, no, I love that idea. Um, so, I met Truly through dancing and teaching in Maryland. And, I definitely felt like a fish out of water because I moved here from Texas. And I was like, I don't know anybody in the Maryland dance dance community, obviously, as we all know, is small. And when you're even though you're in a new space, that community, like, it's small, and so everybody knows everybody, right? And so I just felt like, well, I don't know anybody. We meetings were just like, oh, we can just call, so and so to come dance. And I was like, yeah, let's call them. And I'm like, I don't know who that is. But after being here the last 4 years, I, like you, have gotten very ingrained in this DMV dance, especially within my small community. The school where I teach, it's a high school. Dance has been such a huge part of this community, for years. Since the 50s and 60s, almost since this building has been. I believe I'm still teaching dance in a room where someone taught, and probably with the same floors, very few upgrades to this space. In the last, almost 40, 50 years. But that's not even that, 60 years.
yeah.
Yeah. I was like, wait, my math is off. It's 60 years.
How is it that dance spaces are always the last to get renovated, right? And yet there's
Always.
no money, but then all these brand new buildings are being built, but the dance,
Right.
you can still have the same 60-year-old floor with asbestos and mold. Ugh.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Totally. But I think the dance in the DMV is very interesting because, we're not New York, but we're still considered a big city, right? That, people come to visit. But I think but then you have DC, but then you have like places in Maryland and Virginia, which, sometimes get overshadowed by, are you performing at the Kennedy Center? Are you a part of whatever big DC company that is here? When, you know, you have these spaces in places like Maryland and Virginia that I feel like have just as, you know, great of dancers and facilities and companies, that I don't know. So pocketing or putting that thought to the side. The other thing is, I feel like there's also there's a level of students, and I think we were just kind of talking about this in another episode, just talking about performance and teaching performance quality. And I think when we think of performance, we think of the excitement of performance, the excitement of being on stage, that a lot of young dancers don't really have that. And when they get it, they don't get it at a very young age. Sometimes they're getting it in middle school. Sometimes they're getting it at high school. Sometimes it's that first college class that they're just like, oh, this is kind of neat. And so maybe they're not at that place when they leave us, or we encounter them where they are going to be, I'm going to go off to New York and I'm going to dance for this company, or I'm going to go to the next big city and be able to perform in these companies. So then you come back to, well, what is in their local community for them that can really accommodate their level, their style, their passion, that isn't going to dance for A-League, which sometimes, especially being in my county, being in my community here, that's like, I feel like if your students aren't doing that, if they're not like this top-notch important dancer, then what kind of dance are you teaching your students in your program? And I'm like, teaching them a lot of great things. I'm just not teaching them that. Mm-hmm. And not the only thing out there. So where's the appreciation for that? So pocketing that idea too. So then coming back to
so many pockets.
So I totally resonate with everything that you said, and like just you yourself wanting more for your students, wanting more for your community, but also not really knowing how to take all those things and make it into something that at the end of the day, you're like, something's happening, things are happening, things are moving.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, so in my notes that I wrote for today, because I know I'm going to get off topic.
Okay, we do it all the time.
There's so many pockets, right? There's so many pockets. But I did write, one of the things I'm hoping to do is create a collaborative dance community for older dancers, dance educators, people freshly out of college that maybe aren't ready to leave their hometown, but are phenomenal performers and phenomenal, or even maybe students who don't want to go to college, because college is not for everyone. And I don't think anyone should feel pressured into doing that. But it's like, what even is, oh gosh, this is grad school truly all over again. But like, what even is professional dancer? What does that mean? Because I think this umbrella of, oh, well, are you a professional dancer, has always been, they danced for these big names that I recognize, and if they didn't, then it doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And you see that in applications for higher education jobs. They want to know who you've danced with, and if you don't have something to offer in that degree, then you're considered less less capable of your job. And yet I have taken dance classes from numerous people, from extremely talented performers who have danced all over the world, and they don't know how to teach a single dance class.
Say it again, though. Say it again.
It's like, okay, great, you're a wonderful performer and technician, but you don't know the first thing about educating a dancer. You don't know the first thing about constructing a class that every person in your class can be successful at. And I think that needs to way overvalue this whole professional dancer status. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I guess for me, I'm trying to figure out, what does professional dancer mean? And if there's not opportunity beyond just these big names, then like, what are we all even doing? Why are we encouraging so many students to have a passion for something that they're going to continually fail at in the eyes of professional dance? So, I mean, it's more than just like, oh, I want something else to do beyond academia. It's that I see these other fabulous technicians, performers, creatives, movers, passionate people about dance that have no outlet. And it's, it's really sad. So that's where we're at. Sorry.
No, but for real though.
Yeah, very much. It's funny. So when I was in Texas, we would have this kind of like what we have in Maryland, Texas Dance Educator Association, and it seemed like there was always this competition between the competitive dance companies, who was going to get the best, who was going to sponsor the best professional class. And one of the dance companies, competition companies there had, and I don't remember his name. He was from So You Think You Can Dance. He was not Twitch, but he had like the big like gauge piercing, kind of funky like mohawk hair. Anyhow, I don't know. I can't remember what it's
Like,
like.
I never remember anybody's
But
name.
people like I mean, he was definitely on So You Think You Can Dance, like very glorified, and people were like, "Oh my God, you're great. No one can do what you do." Blah 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 blah. Yeah. So then he comes in and he's teaching this class to us, and he's trying to teach what it is that he does. We can't do it because you don't know how to teach it before. This is not something, you're not a trained dance educator, right? But here it is, you are this professional dancer that, you've been on this show, people are paying to have you come in and do these master classes, yet what did I take away from that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I feel like we have to stop selling this experience for our dancers where they're not getting anything out of it. My students and I have worked with, a local choreographer that just kind of dropped the ball on us, to be honest with you. And it's just like, if you are this person that has this company and you're trying to train these young dancers, and you are trying to make these young dancers, these young movers feel good, if you're not able to like be about your business, then what are you doing? Sorry, that was off topic a little bit too, but
no. I honestly think that both things were directly on topic of this here transition. So because there is very much that idea, just in applying for higher ed positions, that if you don't have a name, first of all, you're lucky to get in, lucky to get a foot in the door. And then it's almost as though you by default get relegated to the best you're going to get, quotation fingers, is adjunct. Because you don't have the big name and you don't have the title and you don't have the world recognition in order to bring in more people. And so it doesn't really matter how accomplished of an educator you are and how you can back that up through just demonstrating in person what you can do. You can show the stats from how your students have grown. You can get personal testimonies. You can literally back up every single thing. But since you don't have that name, it is so much harder for you to be able to move forward. And so as an adjunct, for those who are not clear on what that means, it means you are teaching essentially, in some cases, a full-time load for barely half-time pay. There is this misconception that you've made it when you've made it to higher ed. And I know I've been on the receiving end of some of that since I've transitioned out of K-12. Then it was like, oh, well, now you're up here, like you're making the big bucks. I'm like, oh, but I'm not though. I'm making significantly less than what I was making.
Yes. Let me go back to K through 12.
But let me tell you how it crossed my mind a couple times, and I'm like, I ain't gonna do it. But now, and I shared this with them offline, I was like, I'm now in a position where it's like, okay, but so we got to find another source of income to kind of offset this. But the issue with that, amongst so many other things, is that, again, I am teaching pretty much a full load. So when am I working? When do I have time for this other job?
Yep.
I'm also in school. When do I have time to study and write? When do I sleep? I got kids. When do they know that their mom loves them enough to see them and hang with them? And not to say that that's all the fault of an adjunct position, but
yeah,
it low key is the fault of an adjunct position. Because I'm like, I'm only certified to do this. I only have degrees in this. This is what I do. And you're wanting full-time work out of me. And I promise you, this is not half-time pay. I don't make half of what.
It's not even close to half-time.
Like, I don't make half of what these people
full-time pay. It's really, yeah. And I've, again, I really struggle with this because I walked into an adjunct position, not even qualified, and it was very much about who I knew and the fact that we're a small university and they were in a bind. And I was able to step in and help out, and then able to start my grad school program shortly after, and have been in this position kind of since. So I feel extremely grateful and fortunate for the experiences that I've had. But now I'm getting to this point where it's no longer an opportunity, and it feels more like this place of abuse almost. And I know that sounds like that's a very strong word, but it is. Every semester, I'm hired last minute, or, oh, okay, here's your contract's coming, and then I'm just kind of told you're going to be teaching these classes. Oh, and we also need you to do these things. And at first it's like, yes, give me all the things, let me have all the opportunity, because I need this to build. And now, I've done the work, I've continually shifted and transitioned throughout the course of teaching, and yet there's been zero growth from the university side of things, and zero promise for growth. And then, you can look for other positions elsewhere. And if you go to higher ed and you search dance positions for higher ed, 90% of those jobs that are offered, and it'll show 120 or so, 90% of those are adjunct positions. Mm-hmm. And within that job description for what you should be able to do as an adjunct, it's teach this style class, this style class, this style class, teach this theory class, be able to do this. You have to be able to do A through Z in order to even be considered to apply for the position. And then when you get hired for the position, you're expected to do A through Z, which again makes sense. It follows the job description, but you end up doing more oftentimes than not than some of the full-time faculty, because you are the fill-in. And then I just wonder, how many universities are being successful on the backs of adjuncts and paying as little as they're paying for those adjuncts. And yet they're requiring those adjuncts to have MFAs, PhDs. They're requiring those adjuncts to have university teaching experience. And yet they're not even coming close to compensating that experience and that education that those individuals have achieved. They're not even close to compensating that financially. And it's a very broken system, and I am fearful because I've been watching, I clearly don't just want to stay an adjunct forever. But I've not seen any type of a shift. And if anything, I think from COVID, I've seen a shift in the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. There's even fewer full-time tenure track positions available. And there's even more adjunct positions available. But how can anyone, as Truly was saying, how can anyone put their all into a part-time job that really is full-time? Teaching 3 to 4 classes a semester is full-time for most tenure track professors, and they're expecting the adjunct hire to do that. So it's full-time work but you're getting paid the lowest of the low. And then there's no guarantee that you'll be hired again in the spring, or that you'll be hired again next fall. So it's on these contracts for, 3 months to 9 months. So even if you were to, okay, let's take this opportunity and I'm going to move across the country to become an adjunct at this other university, there's potential for growth there. What person can uproot their life like that and afford to uproot their life like that and then not also get a second or a third job? I mean, the entire time I've been adjunct in WKU, I've had 2 or 3 other jobs on top of other private lessons that and we all hustle, I'm not trying to complain. We all hustle, we all have our side gigs,
Yeah.
But then there comes a point where it's, when do I get to also invest time in my dance community outside of WKU, you know, in my dance community outside of all these other jobs that I'm doing? And so it's kind of this vicious cycle, I feel like, where you have extremely resourceful, educated individuals that are getting placed in these adjunct positions and are expected to provide high quality education, and yet they've got families to take care of, they've got other part-time jobs they have to take because they can't sustain themselves off of just adjunct pay, and yet they're still expected to do the full-time work of a full-time professor. And it's just, I don't know, it blows my mind that it's that it's continued to exist like this as long as it has, and that there are as many people as I know stuck in the same situation, and there's no conversation of change, there's no adaptability within the university, or no recognition from the university that this is a problem. And I mean, it's scary. It almost makes me not even really want to be in academia anymore, not even as a tenure track position, because the tenure track faculty is also swamped, and then they're relying on these adjuncts, and they don't want to, because they understand that it's not fair, and it's I don't know.
And I wonder, it's interesting to hear that too, not being in higher ed, but just in K through 12, but going to the NDEO conference last year and listening to a lot of, especially last year when everything was, everybody was really trying hard to like express how their programs are being diverse. How are we bringing diversity to our programs? And it's frustrating because I'm pretty sure those tenure track professors are the ones that are teaching that same very European style. Those adjunct teachers are the diversity that they're trying to bring to their programs. And it's like, so you're saying that you're trying to value these diverse dance styles, but they're not valued enough to be full-time tenure positions.
Yep.
But they're your adjunct. And so we just throw them in, teach these couple of classes just so there's variety in our program. And
yeah, academia is all about checking a box.
Yes.
And yeah, that's exactly what's happening, is they're checking a box by bringing in diversity with an adjunct instructor that's going to teach 2 to 3 classes of maybe something that's not normally on the academic curriculum. And then those adjuncts are getting paid little to no money to provide this huge thing, this huge shift that needs to take place and become not just an add-on or an elective. It needs to shift the academic curriculum of the universities. If you do a search of dance universities across the US, how many of those programs have within their curriculum mandatory jazz classes, mandatory tap classes, mandatory African diaspora background classes, like that are mandatory classes within their curriculum? And it's not. You have modern programs and you have ballet programs. And so not only are you hiring out culture to be paid at a very small fee, but you're also then saying that you don't value that education of dance, that art form of dance, as much as you're valuing ballet and modern, which comes from a very whitewashed background. And I know it's going to take time to transition out of that, but you got to start by putting your money where your mouth is first. Yeah, and that, I mean, like, that's expansive beyond just adjunct in general. But I do think it's just, if you're wanting to create versatile dancers, which I think is what academia should be about, creating a versatile dancer that is well educated across all perspectives of dance, then why are you limiting to only offering tenure positions to ballet and modern professors?
Right. And going back to that idea of why would we be trying to push our students into something where essentially they're always going to fail? How do I keep pushing students through programs? And this is something they may be interested in doing, knowing good and well that I'm like, okay, you will be lucky if you can even be adjunct. And that luck is a rough type of luck.
Yes.
Because, and again, similar to you, Kylene, like I am thankful for the opportunity. I am. I was like, it's not that I'm not, but then it's also the ability to be able to step back and to see what some of the issues are with the system. And of course, it's not just the arts. It's across the board, this issue with adjuncts. And I'm like, y'all, but y'all have money though. Not saying that you can hire every single person full-time tenure track, not saying that. However, there's money in a lot of these places. My current location, there has been a gift given, and I'm like, but you got enough to hire a couple of people. Could you please consider? Yes. We're in the process of trying to help build dance as an actual major, which in itself, you cannot have a major and there's only one full-time person. Impossible. That's not gonna work.
Nope.
But everybody minus that one person that's on the committee to do all this writing, all adjunct. And some are just, you know, outside.
To those students too.
And it is
have one full-time faculty. It's a disservice to those students.
And that was my argument even when I was doing performing arts high school, that I argued. I was like, yo, I need at least one other full-time person, preferably two. I was like, because am I talented and great at what I do? Yes. However, they're only getting my side of things. Someone else needs to be in here to like offset this and help balance them out. Because even if we both know the same information, just how we deliver it even can be the difference between a student really like getting it and it clicks and them still struggling. So I'm like, it is a disservice. And you would think that once you get to this higher level that, okay, maybe they've kind of figured that thing out and it's not going to be such a issue. And I get there and it's like, oh, it's the same thing. I was like, oh my God. I was like, y'all had me thinking I was going to, it's like, oh, I've arrived. And I get here and I was like, okay, I mean, I showed up, but did I arrive though?
Yeah.
No, because I cannot, it's not a living wage for real. At least in the state of Maryland. Let me say that.
I think it's across the board. It's not a living wage.
Like it is mandatory for us, unless we are so blessed to have income coming from someone else who's going to support us, we have to do something else. And then, of course, that's going to cut into the time that I have to dedicate to the students, because I'm like, as much as I love my kids, like my students, I love them and I want to do everything I can for them and I want to give them all the opportunities I can. However, I also need a roof over my head. I also have 3 kids that I actually gave birth to who I have to keep a roof over their head. I have to feed them. They need to go to the doctor. I need to be able to pay for that. Like they have their own lives that I have to pay for activities for. They have their own school supplies that they need things for. And I'm just like, okay.
And let's also talk about, I don't know, the debt that you may have from the education that you
and we talk about
to then be able to be in the position you're in teaching at higher education. And that is what is wild to me. Is
mind-boggling.
You've done the work, you've put in the time, you've put in the money, you've done these things to become the educator that you are, which is mandatory in order to even be hired for this coveted position of adjunct.
Yes.
And then they're going to give you a tiny little pocket change of pennies, you know?
Like
and
this MFA was required. And I don't make enough to pay off getting the MFA. I was like, guys, hello, that it does not make sense. So either we need to not be charged as much, these loans need to not be the situation, or you need to pay us more. I'll take either. At this point in the game, I'm like, either just handle these loans for me.
Yep.
Or pay me enough where I can pay those back because I had to get the degrees to do the job, but I want to be able to pay them and still live. Like, I shouldn't have to choose, okay, am I going to pay this loan payment this month, or will we eat? Will the lights be cut on?
Yeah.
Like, I want to be able to be okay. Like, I'm not asking to be rich. I'm not saying first year coming in, I want 6 figures. I mean, if you want to bless my life with 6 figures coming in, please do, by all means. But a living wage, no matter what state you're in, should be what it is. And I don't understand. You know what? That's a lie. I do understand why they do it the way they do. I know exactly why they do it the way they do it. And they're trash as hell for doing it the way they do it. Like, for educators, because I mean, there's other fields where that living wage is even worse. Like, there are other jobs. But as an educator, to tell me I have to do XYZ to get the job, but then I get the job, I hopefully get the job. Hopefully. Say that. I hopefully get the job. And then I get the job, and the job does not offset the preparation for said job. I would have been better off doing something else.
Yeah.
And the fact that I love it only goes but so far.
Yes.
Because bills.
That's what I was getting ready to say. You know, none of us go into dance expecting to become multimillionaires. That's not why we do this. Yes. We do it because we love it. We do it because we're passionate about it. It changes our lives for the better beyond anything monetarily that could be given to us. And we want to continue to share that and express that with people. But I think, especially when you're looking from the terms of academia and you see how much money is involved in academia, and then you see the demands for the prowess you have to attain in order to be an educator within academia, why is that not more of a level playing field then with the compensation that's being provided for those educators that are continually investing in themselves to become better educators? Why is that not being compensated more on an equal playing field when there is a lot of money? There's a lot of money in the universe.
Because if you can build a new stadium, you can hire these educators, is what you can do.
Yes. You know, I don't know. And if the focus of so many universities, you know, they are student driven and that's their focus and their main priority is student success and student education, well, then why are the financial budgets not directly showing that, you know? Yes. Instead, you see a bunch of money being spent on all of these extracurricular things that are all about student experience. I'm all about the student experience being wonderful, but the main point of being in college is for the educational purposes. And so if you're not putting those financial, that financial focus is the priority of the educators and making sure those educators are well taken care of, not just the full-time educators, but the main majority of educators at universities are also adjunct. Like, it's pretty 50-50, I would say. That there needs to be a change. And I don't know, I don't understand it. But and it makes it hard because then you want to educate. You know, I work a lot with high school students too. I work a lot with kids in middle school through the different studios that I've taught. And you have these young kids that are so passionate about dance and they want to continue to do dance. And then you think, okay, going back to that idea of professional, you know, what's their route? Are they going to be able to go on and be a professional dancer, or are they going to be an educator, or are they going to, you know, pursue something different in dance? You know, there's so many different things that you can do with dance. 100%. It's not just professional or educator. But you start to think, okay, here I am igniting this passion in them at a young age. For what? To set them up for what? You know? And it's just this whole trickle down effect. And it's just, you live in it and you drown in it. And yet you continue to do it day after day. And then nothing changes. And I don't know. And I know it's not just, it's definitely an academia thing at higher ed, like beyond just the department. It's not the department's fault. You know, my department is so supportive of me. They want to see me continue to grow. They constantly help me draw the line too within academia as to know I'm not doing this because that is not in my pay grade. So I'm very grateful for that. But everything goes beyond them, and it's it's unfortunately decisions being made higher up in academia that have no idea about how the programs themselves actually are being run and what the needs of those programs are in order for students to truly be successful.
Yeah.
And it's a very broken system. It's unfortunate.
It is. And I agree. My department, the people in my department, the actual department, great. There's no problem there. It's beyond the department's control. And
Yeah.
it's similar to K-12. It's usually the people who are making these decisions are the people who
have no idea.
They have zero idea. Either they've never been in the classroom, they've never had to see these things happen from the ground, or they have forgotten what it's like.
Yep.
And that's unfortunately definitely also in K-12 that happens quite frequently. And I will say that the turnover rate, you can't keep saying that there's an issue, and this is K-12, this is higher ed, period. You can't keep talking about the issue with educators don't want to stay when you don't do what you need to do to keep us.
Yep.
Because I've known a lot of great K-12 educators who are just like, yeah, but no, I can't. I can't do this anymore. This, for what I have to do for that amount of money, I can't. And the same now, higher ed, one of my first position in higher ed that I did end up, I became one of the contributors to the high turnover rate at that institution, was just like, oh, I love what I do. However, you definitely don't pay me. And I spent the bulk of that little bit of money just commuting. And I'm like, oh, this is dumb. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so like students are like, I got emails from a few, they're like, oh my God, you're not coming back. Like, could you please come back? Like, I loved your class. You're the reason that I wanted to like keep learning more about dance and all this. And I'm like, I wish I could.
Yeah.
But I cannot work just to get to work. Like, I have to be able to live. And so now I don't really give a damn about the university. Those students are missing out. And that's my issue. That I'm like, this, at the end of the day, that's who gets shortchanged educationally. We get shortchanged financially from the jump. But when it comes down to it, they lose out because they're paying for this.
Yes.
And it's like, we're just going to hope for the best.
What are they paying for? You know, where is their money actually going? And that's something I don't think I'll ever really understand about the university is, you know, maybe it needs to be re-envisioned as to where different money is allocated. And, you know, I get it. Athletics brings in a ton of money. I understand that. And so, you know, I get why maybe athletics has a bigger budget to use. I understand it. But I also question though, because there's lots of times where the university, you know, like dancers were very resourceful. And I know one thing that I'm extremely proud of, the faculty I work with, we have worked tirelessly over the past few years to try and create revenue for ourselves, revenue for our students to either go on trips, revenue for our students to get guest artists in that maybe the university wouldn't have sponsored originally. And what troubles me is when we work really hard to create these opportunities to create revenue for our students to use, and then the university swallows that within the program budget because it's all under one program and it all belongs. And then we don't see that money being used for our students. That's where I have to scratch my head and say, there's something wrong in the system and there's something corrupt going on when you talk about finances within the university and you talk about allocating finances for the student with the student in mind. And I think it also comes back to why we're not seeing growth within the hiring pool for these students, growth within opportunity for these students within these majors and minors that they're coming to school to learn and get an education and eventually move on to professional field in. I don't know. I think the finances are just, all over the place and no one really knows where it's going or why it's going there and why it can't come here.
Yeah, like the finances are sketchy at best.
Yes.
I will say the thing I did enjoy at the high schools is becoming friends with the bookkeepers, because I got to see if my money actually went where it was supposed to go.
Where it's supposed to go. Yeah.
And that is not the testimony higher ed that I have seen thus far. That it does not work that way. That if I had a dance concert at the high school, then that money went into the dance account. Period.
Yep.
And to the point at my second location that there was the dance class account and then the dance company account. That if we had like the regular concert that everybody is a part of, goes into the class account so I can get costumes, make sure everything that the program needs to run can run. For the company, that's the group that would travel. So if we do a fundraiser, and that's so we can, pay for our buses to go to these different things, then I can see that money's there. So that way students who weren't in company weren't paying for something that they would never have access to. And those who were fundraising specifically for this cause, they know that money isn't going towards those who aren't. And so I could see that and I could track it, and that was great. At this level though, it's like, where is the money though? Like, where did,
yeah.
like,
and then, with my experience, they've encouraged, oh, well, we need to grow the program. We need more students. We need to see an increase of students before we can justify, bringing on a new full-time position. And the program itself has doubled in the past 5 years, minimum. And yet we're still sitting here and now we're wondering, okay, we have to turn students away from classes because there's not enough space, because our dance studios have not been touched since, 1964. And, we have to turn dancers away because capacity reasons, because there's not enough educators to teach the courses that are needed. And then it's like, and then we see all these changes happening on campus, and new buildings being built. They're tearing down a perfectly good building that could house a dance floor, a theater. It's all, the bones are there, and yet they're just tearing it down to create green space. Oh, and all these decisions are being made and no one's being included in these decisions. And then they're telling us, well, you have to blah, 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 blah. And we're like, okay, here. And then nothing.
And then crickets.
Oh, well, maybe in 5 more years. Oh, well, COVID was such a setback. So, but yet our enrollment is up. There's so many, and it's just, it just becomes exhausting to a point where, like you had said before, you start to have these conversations with yourself. Do I love it? Yes. Am I making a difference doing what I'm doing? 100%, or at least I hope so. And I feel like I am. And then there comes a point where it's like, but now what? Is this still, where's that line? When do I draw that line? And when do I say, I think I can put my time and energy and professionalism and education into something else that's also going to return to me all the work and time and money that I've spent to get to where I'm at right now. And I think so many educators are running into this problem at K through 12, at academia, higher ed. And it's just unfortunate, because then what do we encourage our young students to do when we're struggling now? It's not getting any better.
It's not. This is how we end up with a teacher shortage. FYI.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to want to do this.
No.
It's like, oh, this is horrible. I'm not going to do this as a major.
They're just going to keep hiring younger, less competent, less educated people to fill the position, to give them the opportunity, which great. Everyone needs the opportunity. And again, I'm not discounting my opportunity, but if they're just going to replace them then with that, then is that not also lessening the level of education that then those students are receiving?
Right.
Yeah.
So again, here we are, continuous cycle of doom.
Like vicious cycles. Like,
It is. Yeah, I mean, I think for this position that I'm in, I think it was just like a revolving door of like people coming in and out, no one really staying, right? For the high school level, right? I mean, I obviously you see a little bit of longevity in collegiate programs, and of course, if someone owns a dance studio, they'll teach there until they die, or they give it over to like another student. But you have these high school programs that, you know, I came from a school where this woman has been there for 20 years. This is actually her 22nd year in this program. And for programs to really thrive, there has to be some continuity. There has to be some type of like stationary thing, right, that keeps it going. And when you have, even in the K through 12 realm, when you have these dancers that are good educators, but you can't keep them there because I mean, people don't want to teach in a 60-year-old building, in a 60-year-old room, right? They don't want to teach where they're constantly being told that, oh, well, we don't have any money for, you this year. But yet I can sit here and look at, just told Julie this before the call, I can sit here and look at over, $10,000 to $15,000 in cheer uniforms that someone literally had in a broken box in a room, untouched. And yet there's still money in that budget that people are like, well, if you want to order new uniforms, you have money in your budget. No, we're going to wear these and we're going to use that money for something else to help to continue to grow this program, opposed to like wasting it. And there's just a lot of waste that I think happening, even in obviously in the K through 12 round two, where it's like, how is this supporting students? How are we supporting all the other arts and programs here? So it's just unfortunate.
Well, and then too, you look back at this past year, everyone was quarantined, everyone was home, everyone was relying strictly on the arts to get by. Mm-hmm. And then we go to, and we look at what is the university value, what is our own community's value? Clearly they value the arts, but that's not what their money's showing. That's the first thing to be cut from programs. That's the first thing to go away from, or to not get the money. And I think it's just, unfortunately, probably going to continue like that, because then we start looking at what was necessary jobs, to start back again. And I totally understand why things went back the way that they were, but for a whole year, this nation relied on entertainment to get by. And those entertainers are being educated somewhere, are being inspired somewhere, are right. Learning and developing their passions somewhere. And it's happening in K through 12, and it's happening at colleges. And if we don't continue to support those programs with revenue and with finances and continue to build that up, I don't know. I mean, like, again, we'll always find a way, because hello, we're educators and artists, and that's what we do. We find a way, but gosh, it just gets tiring sometimes.
It does. It is exhausting. It's very exhausting. All right, well, on that note, like, that's such a upper to end on.
I know.
But I mean, it's real though. It's very real, and not enough people, like, it gets talked about, but not nearly as much as it should, and not to the extent of things really shifting. Mm-hmm. So I think as long as we are able to continue to keep the conversation going, at least there may be a twinkle of hope that a shift will come before we're all older and retired.
Well, and I think one of the reasons why it continues the way it is because adjuncts are seen as contractual hires. Mm-hmm. It's an individual, it's not a body of people. Whereas faculty is a body of people. If the faculty are upset about something, you're going to hear about it, but an adjunct is just an individual. So I've also just been curious as to, are there any type of like adjunct unions out there? You know, is there room for adjunct support or adjuncts to come together and start to kind of fight for these rights? You know, and again, this is just talking about higher education, but
Yeah.
I wonder why that is. Why has it been like this for so long and will continue to be like this? So.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good question. Because I don't know that I've seen anything union based, but I do think as a united front, there would be a better chance. But
who has the time, right?
who does? Because we're working like 30 other jobs. So we don't have
And here
time
we
to
are.
come together.
The vicious cycle continues.
And we're back. All right. Well, Kylene, thank you so much for joining us today. This is an amazing conversation, definitely a needed conversation.
Yeah.
It's always good to know we're not alone.
And thank you both for being educators as well. I mean, it's definitely a huge undertaking, and it really takes incredibly passionate people to do it. And I can tell both of you are my kind of people. So
yes. All right, awesome. And thank you all again for joining us here at Dance Talk Realness. If you have any questions, comments, observations, anything that you would like for us to follow up with Kylene about and ask questions about, be sure to drop us a line. Make sure to like, comment, follow, subscribe across all the places where you can find us. And we look forward to bringing you some fresh new content next week. We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.